Hello, everyone, and welcome to the official New Japan Pro Wrestling English podcast. My name is Chris Charlton, and this is another of our at-home sessions during the current global situation. But it's allowing us to take on new guests and have new conversations we wouldn't normally, and that's why I'm very happy to be joined on this episode by a former two-time IWGP Tag Team Champion, a former two-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion. His book Strong Style is available right now wherever books are sold. Scott Norton, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Man, it's awesome. Great. Glad to be on.
We're going to sort of have a fun time here today talking about your past career in Japan and two or three matches that you can find on NJPWWorld.com from the archives here. But first of all, I was wondering, Scott, I know last year you came to the G1 opener in Dallas, and have you been keeping up with the current goings on in New Japan at all?
I have a little bit, not as much as it's a little different once you get a step away from it. And, I'm retired and when I'm around it, I love it. I miss it so much. But as far as, I keep track of some of the guys, and it's just, I'm really happy how well New Japan is doing here in the States. And, it was great. It was great catching up with all the boys and seen a variety of the guys.
And I had the chance to read the book last year, and it's a really recommended read. It's a really fun look back at your career. What was the process? What sort of drove you to think that now was the time to put all that to paper, and what was the writing process like for you?
Well, it was awesome. I mean, I worked with a guy named Adam Randis that was one of my number one fans, and he's just a fantastic writer. And, just going over my whole career in New Japan with all my arm wrestling stuff and, growing up as a kid in Minnesota with, Rick Rude Hawk, going through Brett Reagan's camp, my arm wrestling career, it's a great read, and it was a lot of fun doing it. My professional career was amazing in Japan. New Japan to me, was the pinnacle. I mean, being in that company for as long as I was very important to me, and I'm very grateful for the career I had in Japan and the friendships I made over the years, the opportunities they gave me, and it was a great relationship for a long time.
So one of the things that surprised me reading the book, I think a lot of the hardcore New Japan fans would know you coming into the scene in the 90s and touring regularly from around late 1990, was that right?
Yeah.
But you were actually invited and you met Masa Saito back in 1987, and they wanted you in at that point, correct?
Yeah. It took a while. I went back to the States and went through Brad's camp. Then, met with Masa again. Masa told me, he says, you got to get some TV experience. So immediately I went with the AWA right before they closed down. And then I went to Portland, Oregon, worked for Don Owens in the Pacific Northwest for a year. And when the time came, they gave me the call when they thought I was ready, and it was a whirlwind after that.
It was kind of at that time where there were a lot of famous, almost legendary stories, in the early 90s. And I know Tiger Hattori, who retired recently from refereeing, he did an interview with us and was talking about how often he would be called to Harajuku police station because some of the foreign boys had been fighting in some bar somewhere. That Tiger never mentioned your name in the interview? Did you?
No, I didn't do that. I when I went to Japan, I went there as a professional. I knew that they were giving me an opportunity that was second to none. Masa used to keep me away from that. There's two towers in the Kyo Plaza, the North Tower and the main tower. Well, all the boys stayed at the North Tower, and I stayed in the main tower. He kept me away from me. He told me, he says, "You just stay out of trouble. You listen to me and do what I tell you. You're going to go a long ways." And I did that. Not to say I didn't have some fun in Japan. We went out and did our things. But when it came time for that kind of thing, I didn't get too involved.
Smart. Smart, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked.
I saw recently, I think the other day, you shared a picture of a Tokyo Dome after party from '91 and Ric Flair putting his Rolex up.
Oh, yeah. You see, that's when Masa, that night was crazy. And me and Butch Reed arm wrestled later on in the evening that night.
Mm-hmm.
And we arm wrestled for our payoffs. And I told him I'd beat him in 1 second. And when I did, he just went nuts. And yeah, we were to go outside and throw down and let it rip. And Arn Anderson, Flair, and Moss and everybody broke it up. And they got Butch going one way, and they got me going the other. And then right after that, that's when Masa told me, and man, laid the law down on me. He says, "This ain't going to work for you. You know, I'm trusting you. I want you to come here and give me your best." And, I listened to him. Masa meant a great deal to me. And what he said, I tried. I did. And he was more and fair at me forever. Best friend in the business I possibly could ever have. And I trusted Masa. It was an awesome friendship. And I was right. I did the right thing. Listening to him was the right thing to do, so it was good.
Yeah, no, I mean that showed with the length of the career that you had in Japan, which was at close to around about 16 years. I mean, you're still wrestling through the mid 2000s for New Japan. So I mean, it was a real sort of indication of that long term investment, the long term, almost a partnership that you had with us here.
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole different style. I mean, it was so much rougher and hardcore than it was in the States. And I mean, like right now, I mean, I'm paying the price for it. Believe me, I got my right knee replaced. I'm getting my left one replaced after that. And then early next year, I'm getting both shoulders done. Wow. But, we worked. I mean, we didn't take matches off. We gutted everything out. That was a strong style, brother. And I mean, when you got to call New Japan back in the 90s, early 2000s, that was it, man. That's where you wanted to be. And that's, to me, it was the pinnacle. It was the best. I loved that company. I loved everything about it. All the boys. I got friendships that are just amazing. The company, it was just an awesome place for me to wrestle. It was perfect for me. I was made for that place.
Mm. And there was, I mean, you became, and the 1990s a huge boom period for pro wrestling in general in Japan, and especially for New Japan. But you became a mainstream celebrity, and you told the stories in the book about the commercials you did, and my favorite thing, if you're very adept at YouTube searching, the pushing the buses down the street.
That was crazy. That was awesome.
How did that come about?
Well, I showed up for a tour. We're doing our first TV the first night of the tour, and Moss comes walking in the locker room, and he looks at me and goes, "You got good sneakers?" And I said, back then I used to buy a new pair of tennis shoes for every tour. It's crazy. And I said, "Yeah, I got good shoes." I mean, what do you mean? And he goes, "Good." He just turned around and walked away. I go, I remember turning to one of the boys and said, "What the hell is that all about?" So later on that night, I went out to dinner with Masa, Hattori. I think it was me, Benoit, and a couple other boys. And Masa told me, "In 2 weeks, you push bus." I said, "I push bus?" He says, "Yeah, big contest. You got to win. You be good boy." I says, and I was, I listened to Masa. So a couple of weeks later, here I am on a Saturday afternoon. Got all these people out there, and they got big rural buses going, and for crying out loud. And man, it was something I'll never forget. It was pretty cool. And I'm glad it happened. it went crazy. Everybody's, I'd be walking down the street, going to a hotel or a restaurant, and all of a sudden, no, just son. I'm looking around, and go, who the hell's calling my name? And I look over here, and there's this bus driver standing behind his bus like he's pushing it,
Right.
and he's jumping up and down. And me and Hawk are walking to a steakhouse right close to the Keo Plaza. And we just about busted out, man. I said, and so we walked over there, and he asked me to sign his bus and everything. And it was so cool, The people were so good to us, and they appreciated everything you did. And that was one tough push. I thought I was losing. When I looked to the right, I didn't see any buses.
Oh, you were that far in front, yeah.
I'm getting killed here, so I just stuck my head down and just went nuts. And then when I finally finished, I realized I was about 2 miles ahead of everybody, and I could have just coasted it. But
that's
those were the
good.
days, man. I mean, it was a lot of fun back then.
That's got to be a relief, right? Because I mean, you're put in this situation with two other athletes, and you're representing the entire New Japan Pro Wrestling and the entire pro wrestling scene at that point. Very similar to how later on in the early 2000s you'd see wrestlers going to MMA fights and whatnot. There's a lot of pressure being put on you.
That's exactly how don't you lose. I said, okay. And I mean, when Masa talked to you, you could tell when he was serious. And I mean, he was a serious dude. And I remember because that night we went out, Masa ordered a round of beers and I got water. He says, party this tour. I said, you push bust then party. I said, all right. So, yeah, that was pretty wild, and it's a great memory because me and Hawk, I love Mike, and Mike was there. He was just going nuts. It was kind of remind me back in my arm wrestling days when me and Hawk would go to these tournaments, and it was pretty cool.
Tremendous. Okay, so what I wanted to do here today is take a look back at 2 or 3 of the matches that we can find from Scott on NJPWWorld.com. And New Japan World, right now, even though there's no live events going on at the moment, the NJPW Together project has allowed so much great content to be put on that service. We're getting new archival matches added almost on a daily basis, a lot of them with English commentary from our great partner Kevin Kelly. We're also having new documentaries, movies. You can even see Hiroshi Tanahashi and My Dad's a Heel Wrestler, almost as effective a starring role as Scott Norton in Over the Top. So we want to have a look at 2 or 3 of these matches, and I picked out a few matches here to take a look at. And the first I wanted to talk about, or the first opponent of yours, was, of course, Big Van Vader. And there's a great match to look back on from May the 31st, 1991, Osaka Joe Hall, where it was Vader versus Scott Norton. And this one's got, I mean, nowadays, in May, we tend to have the Best of the Super Junior tour, where it's a focus on the junior heavyweights, but in the early 90s and 1991, this was the Clash of the Super Heavyweights tour, so a complete sort of 180 from where we are usually at this time of year.
Yeah, because I was always on the junior tour. Every junior tour I was on it. And I tell you something, that was awesome. But those junior tournaments were absolutely the best wrestling you could ever see. But yeah, I never realized that, but that's okay. I'll take your word for it.
And I mean, here you have obviously the attraction of the two just giants with yourself and Vader. Bam Bam was around at the time, and of course guys like Hashimoto. I mean, Japanese super heavyweights as well. But the role, I guess, it's kind of a forgotten art or a forgotten role of the giant monster foreign heel wrestler that used to be so prevalent, of these huge American giants walking into Japan. Yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you think that the role of a non-Japanese wrestler has changed over the time when you were active and your time away from it now?
Well, when I started in New Japan, I mean, Vader was a great heel. Vader was an unbelievable big man in the ring, super talented and everything. And I remember Masa just being frustrated. He says, he wanted me to be just this killer, and I was. When I hit the ring, brother, I mean, it was on. And I mean, I lit the candle, brother, and we went. But the people, they always responded to me in a favorable way. I remember hitting Muda with just huge moves, just crushing them, and they'd pop, cheer, and I'm just, they're not, and it's just, Monster just pulls hair out. He says, "I trust you. You just do what you do."
Mm.
So, the Monster Hill thing was cool as far as all the Americans going over to get in the heat and whatever happened. Leon was great at, Bam Bam was great at, all the boys, Stan Hansen, Steve, all of them. But I was different. I mean, the fans took to me a little bit differently.
Mm.
And even like Team 2000 and NWO days, they just, so I wasn't a monster heel, but I was just a real solid, strong style wrestler. And I mean, I brought it.
This is something you see in that match with Vader. There is not a moment, in this the entire video on NJPWWorld.com. There's not a moment that doesn't look incredibly painful.
I wish Leon would have never left, because we could have had some great matches over the years. But he did, and that's okay. I mean, business is business. Whatever happens, wherever it takes you, wherever it takes you. But he was a great wrestler, and I'll tell you something. They were live rounds, brother. I mean, we didn't like each other in the ring. I mean, it's not that I didn't like Leon professionally. He was a super talented pro wrestler. As an individual, we didn't click too much. We never became friends or anything. I respected him, but I mean, inside the ring, I mean, we had no problem cracking the hell out of each other, and we did.
Was there ever like a sense of competition between those, that top flight of heavyweight American wrestlers? I mean, Vader was 2 or 3 years before you came in '87 and was really the top. Yeah.
Leon was pissed that I came in. And I got an opportunity. They're going to bring guys. They brought guys in on me all the time when I was the top number one guy. I mean, there was guys brought in yearly, and they were just, they're going to make you stand your toes. And when I came in, and my first match with Troshu, Haase, and Kinski, it was me, Brad Reagan, and Bad News Brown. The place went nuts. I mean, it turned on to me immediately. My first 5 minutes in the ring, I'd never heard anything like it. And, for whatever reason, I worked in Japan, and it worked for me. It was perfect. And Leon didn't like that. And, and I can understand. He was, he worked hard for his position. He didn't want to let go of it either. But, they bring guys in, man. And I tell you what, it's a dog eat dog. And I wanted, that's where I wanted to be. And nobody's going to stop me. So that's what happened.
One thing that struck me about this match, I don't know if you recall this at all, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. The match ends with a count out. And, immediately after that, there's a lot of brouhaha, and the crowd want this whole thing to continue. So Vader calls it. No, you call Vader back in. And from there, you keep on going at it. And Vader hits you with a backdrop suplex. And it looked, it was a really, really rough impact. Do you remember having any neck issues through the rest of '91 at all?
No. I remember know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I remember saying that. I mean, if he's gonna be that careless of my career, I ain't pulling back. I mean, believe me, I lumped that son of a gun up. I mean, it was a two-way street,
Mm.
and I was still early in my career. If he'd hung around long enough, when I became a lot more seasoned in the
Mm-hmm.
business, that'd have been great. I mean, because he didn't scare me. I mean, he's a giant dude that was a badass, but it didn't. I was okay with that. I mean, anything he tossed, I laughed at him. Not laugh, but I mean, it was just like, he's going, damn, this guy won't stop, and I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, and, I was going to get mine, and we did, and he was a hell of a worker. I'm sad that he's passed and everything.
Mm.
He was, I mean, as good a big man as I've ever been in the ring with.
For sure.
As
For sure.
talented as ever come. Powerful, strong. Got it. I mean, just over like Rover, but that's it was a tough fit with Leon.
So fast forwarding a few years here, I'm going to look at March 21st, 94, and you're challenging Shinya Hashimoto. This is at the time Hashimoto was IWGP Heavyweight Champion, and this was his fourth defense against you, and this was back in Aichi. And one of the things that a lot of people that have wrestled Shinya Hashimoto over the years have come to or came to fear and despise the man's kicks, but really right from the outset of this match as well, and as you said, similar to Vader, a really high pace to a lot of these main event matches at the time. Kind of a short but incredibly intense, like a really intense physical style in the main event in New Japan at the time.
Yeah, me and Hashi had really good chemistry in the ring, and believe me, he let it rip. Them kicks were, I mean, they were solid. He sometimes got a little sloppy too. But no, I loved working Hashimoto. We had a great ring chemistry. See, now I'm getting more seasoned. I'm more of a veteran, and I'm way more comfortable in the ring. And yeah, me and Hashi had some great matches. I mean, I think that's the match where a lot of the WCW boys were in town, and they all second the match.
Yeah.
And they were just blown away because I never got to work matches like that in New Japan or WCW. I was always in the ring 3 to 5 minutes, and it was just a short match gone. And they were just, me and Hashi that was a hell of a match. And we went out there and just tore the house down. And high intensity from the beginning. And I remember being in the locker room afterwards, and Hashi comes walking into my locker room, and he's got a towel wrapped around him with a little shower kit and his little flip-flops on, and he walks up to me, he goes, "You crazy, man. You crazy." And I said, "Man, great match, Hashi." And we just, I love that dude, man. Me and him were really good friends outside of the ring. And he was but when they rang the bell, it was like the evil Elvis. The dude went, and I mean it. He was just, he had the same kind of, he wasn't going to give up an inch. It's another, Hashi's gone. It's terrible. But me and him had really good ring chemistry. And, yeah, that match was an awesome match. I wrestled that match with a torn bicep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you think that son of a bitch would have took it easy on that thing. And no, I mean it. He knew about it. He knew I was injured. And, man, I mean, it was just, my left arm was hanging off by a thread. I mean, he landed so many kicks on me that, that match was unbelievable. Inside, outside the ring. And yeah, that's a memorable match of mine.
Hashimoto, there's is a lot of stories that I think everybody that knew him can tell. He's certainly quite the character from what I gather,
Oh,
and
he's great.
quite the prankster I hear as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, Hashimoto is them young boys, he drove them crazy.
Yeah.
He always had something going on. He come up to me one time in the locker room. It was after a match. It was like a Sunday afternoon match, and we're getting towards the end of a tour. And he said, "Scottson." I said, "Yeah, I'm Hashi." He says, "Do me big favor." I said, "What can I do for you, Hashi? No problem." He says, "You come back next tour, right?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Bring me sawed-off shotgun." I says, "Hashi, I can't bring a shotgun on the plane." "Okay, just take it apart. You bring barrel one time." And I'll never forget some of the stuff he did. It was crazy. On a day off, we had 2 days off in Tokyo, and we didn't stay at the Kyoto Plaza. We were staying at the Tokyo Dome, and I was bored to death. I think it was a junior tour too, because I was the only like big American guy on there, and then there's some other guys from America, but it wasn't like the normal tour. And I'm losing my mind. I mean, we're sitting around 2 days, and it's just a lot of time off. So I'm walking around in this park area, and I see all these pigeons. So I'm just kind of like, kind of be cool if I could feed them, right? So I see this bakery. I walk in and I buy a loaf of bread. And I go sit down on the park bench and I start feeding these pigeons. And they're all over the place. And all of a sudden, I notice off in the distance, I see Hashimoto with his wife and his kid. And he's sneaking up looking at me. And he's just like blown away. So finally, he walks up, he sits down, he said, "Scottson, what do you do?" I said, "I'm feeding the birds." "Yeah." And we had the biggest laugh, we sat there, we talked, and, because sometimes there's nothing to do in Japan sometimes. You just, a long tour, you get bored. And I'll never forget that. It was a funny moment that he and I shared. That was pretty cool.
The famous Hashimoto story is him gathering a bunch of cicadas in the park all afternoon, and people running. What the hell is he doing with all these cicadas? And then he goes into Satoshi Kojima's room and lets all of these cicadas into his room. So that
sure, he did stuff like that all the time. I mean, Hashi was a little crazy, but he had a good heart. He was a good guy. He really was.
Good grief. Yeah, I mean that this main event and the match we'll talk about in just a little bit with Yuji Nagata are very different. I think fans today watching kind of a main event style, especially in New Japan or to an extent all over the world, we're kind of conditioned often to expect like 30-40 minute main events and a very lengthy main event. And whereas here in the 90s, as we said before, just so intense straight off the bat, lots of high impact and a very, very fast 13-14 minute main events were not uncommon. How do you see that? What's your perspective on how the style in the ring has changed at the main event level?
The style's changed with the style. I mean, there's not a lot of big guys in New Japan anymore. I mean, it's not like the big rough and tough hill, I mean, you got guys like, when I was on the Tokyo Dome a few years back and Omega wrestled in the main, the two top heavyweights, and I mean, they're phenomenal, unbelievable professional wrestlers. But that's the cutting edge as far as a heavyweight in our day. Masa wanted heavy. He wanted guys coming in, and he wanted you'd have to get hit with the ring truck just to even get hurt. I mean, he wanted big badasses that came in and ran people over, and that's what we did. And our style was a little bit different. It was a high pace, vicious. You laid it in there. Now that's more that they got more personalities and more. The showmanship is a lot different than what we were doing. I mean, you see guys like Juice, his character, stuff like that. Great guy. I love Juice, man. He's a phenomenal worker and everything. But it's different than it was when we were, it's almost, to me, it's like, but with us, it was, I mean, a bang, man. I mean, it ended up in a car crash. And, and it's just different, and I mean, different styles. I mean, and the thing about this, New Japan's killing it.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, brother. I mean, they're killing it, and they're a great company, and everything evolves. But I mean, you just look at, I mean, Stan Hansen, Brody, Bam Bam, myself, Steve Williams, Gordy, Vader. You look at the guys. I mean, we're big, strong powerhouses, and usually we have our best matches with guys like Nagata or Chono. A guy that's we got 100 pounds on. Because now they're working from the bottom up. They got to defeat this big monster heel, and they got to cut you down. And they got to, it's different. But now it's a lot more evenly sized guys. I wrestled Lager on his birthday in his hometown one time. And they thought I was going to kill him. And they weren't really that upset about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the size difference, and they just, the Japanese at that point in time, their philosophy with us was they conquering the monster, bringing us down and defeating this unbeatable force, these big, strong, and then, the heart of the Japanese wrestler, they never give up. It just, you got to kill them, beat them. And, and it works, I mean, look at the matches Muda had with Vader when I was there. They were unbelievable. And, Leon would beat the living crap out of Muda for 80% of the match, and all of a sudden here comes Muda, working his way back up. Same thing with Fujinami. Fujinami knew how to do it phenomenally. Choshu was a little bit different. Ricky would be more like us in a different way, but he would take a hold and do certain things. What I was doing was, it was going to end up in a high impact kaboom, so.
The other match I wanted to talk about was September 23rd, 98, which was when you won your first IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Yuji Nagata. But that was kind of really at short notice, right? Because Masahiro Chono had been champion for a month and then had to pull out with his neck injury.
Yeah, that was disappointing as hell. I mean, talk about getting a curveball tossed at you, but I've always had great matches with Nagata. And he's a hell of a worker. I mean, he's smart. He knows how to. Well, at the beginning he didn't. He listened to me. Seriously. I groomed that son of a gun a little bit, and he was super talented. He got over to people, worked hard. He's another guy to kicks. They weren't quite as bad as Ohashi, but they were there. And I always had great matches with them. And that IWGP match, championship match, he was just like losing it. I mean, it was a big deal for him.
Yeah.
I remember going over in the match, winning the title, pretty much dominating them at the end. And they got a picture of him having me in a submission on the front of the magazines. And I guess I said, well, I did my job, I guess. But no, I've always had a good match with Yuji. And that, me and Chono would have had a great match also.
Yes.
Yeah, he was hurt bad. It was, he was, and me and Chono had a long history too. We wrestled a lot.
Mm.
We'd have done all right. But yeah, Yuji, he's had a great career. I guess he just turned 51 this last week here. And,
Yeah, he recently had a party. Yeah.
And he was a hell of a wrestler, man. He was one of my favorite opponents. I love wrestling Yuji.
That at this point he was going back and forth from America as well, and still a young guy, and he and Manabu Nakanishi, who retired recently, was sort of in the midst of an excursion with to WCW. Was there ever were you sort of taking guys like Nagata and Nakanishi under your wing when they were in America as well? Were you sort of teaching them the American ropes?
They didn't need it. They were different. It was almost like they came into America. They did their thing, man. They got situated. They got an apartment. They got all squared away. They learned how, the road and. They kind of assigned a guy to him from WCW, so he was taken care of. But I paid, always talking with him and always going back and forth with him. But no, they did fine in the States. That wasn't even I had a harder time getting along in Japan than they did getting along in the States. But
what was your biggest culture shock moment when you were coming into Japan, especially in those early years?
Oh boy, spending so much time there, going periods of, a day without communicating with anybody sometimes. So you got around the guys in the ring. Some of the hotels, was brutal. They were so small. But I liked it right off the bat. I got to Japan, and Masa and Hattori, they're good to me right away. And it seems like once I got going, I was always doing interviews in the afternoon or doing a magazine here or they got me going to the radio, whatever. And then, like Tayama always took care of me, helped me out. Hattori was always cool with me, Black Cat. It was just, it was easy. People always say, you worked in Japan for that long and you don't know how to speak Japanese. And I wish I'd have learned because I always had somebody to do it for me. And all that time, I sit there.
At that point in 98, you'd been sort of working so hard, so regularly for nearly a decade, and then circumstances being what they were with Masahiro Chono, so kind of an unexpected situation, but now finally being earning that very top spot of being IWGP champion, and you were only the third non-Japanese to ever win it. After Vader and Hashimoto, and the first, as I said, in nearly a decade. So, how much did winning that title mean to you?
Oh, it was awesome. It was that's what you wanted to be, and it was stressful a little bit because they put a lot of pressure on you, but it's okay, it was a great run for me, and what we were doing there was. That's what you worked for. All the matches leading up with guys like Fujinami and Choshu and all these, there's a lot of struggle in the business and everything. Once you get to that point, I had, it was a good feeling once where we went.
Yeah. And, this was, at the peak of NWO Japan, which, American fans know how big a deal the NWO was over there, but just give us some perspective, because it was just as big a phenomenon in Japan than it was elsewhere in the world.
It was unbelievable. I remember the first time I came in to Japan when we were doing the NWO, and when I would first fly to Japan early in my career. I always got off the plane and did interviews. There was always reporters there. There was always somebody there. And then after a while, that stopped. And it just went, I just come in, I get my bags and roll. When we got off the plane, it was me, Bagwell, and Jeff, NWO Sting. If you've seen the group of reporters in that in the airport, it was crazy. There was hundreds of them, and I'm going, holy smokes, this is crazy. And we're going through, and then we're doing all these interviews, and we didn't even know where to be interviewed. And it was awesome. We get to the Keo Plaza, we walk in, and the whole lobby is nothing but NWO shirts and Japanese fans everywhere. And I'm going, this is crazy. I said, look at this. Because that was the norm in the States. People that's the way it was, man. NWO was the deal, man. So we get, I get to my room, I call up NWO Sting, Jeff, and I said, can you believe that? And he says, they're loving this. I said, man, and the next day we're supposed to leave at like 11 o'clock. And they always told you to be on the bus 10:30, we'll leave at 11. So that morning, got up, ordered breakfast, come out down the elevator doors open up, same thing. I'm just going, this is crazy. It took me 5 minutes to get from the elevator to the front door to the bus. And I mean, it wasn't a long walk. And I said, good. So I get out to the bus. Here they got the New Japan bus. It's all painted NWO. They painted it black, and they got this badass paint job on the bus. And I'm just going, holy. And I mean, they were going all in on this NWO thing.
Yeah.
And that night at the arena, it was unbelievable. Just like what was going on in the States. And when I told the boys back here in the States when I got back, they, oh, come on. I said, I'm not kidding you. These people are going nuts with this stuff. And I mean, Chono was the perfect guy to be running the show for us. I mean, he was the perfect personality. I mean, and it just worked, man. And I mean, these people went crazy for that. And when finally we did a dome show and they brought the NWO over, and Hall and Nash said to me, he says, you weren't kidding. I said, I told you, brothers. And they couldn't believe it. And I did a match years later for Anoki. I wrestled the Peter Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the ring and I'm getting ready for this match and wondering what the hell I'm doing, fighting a freaking world champion kickboxer. But, things happen, right? And also I look over and there's a group of people and they're all wearing the NWO shirts. And I remember these people. I remember when they were young fans, and I'm just going, this is nuts. They're still going with this stuff. And that was years later.
Right.
I mean, that was a big deal. And I mean, and the merchandise that they sold was amazing. It was insane. The merchandise, New Japan. We got to be such good buddies, good friends, and I mean, when we worked. I mean, when we went in the circle, Miller was on. But I just miss them times. I mean, it was great camaraderie with the guys, and a lot of people don't understand how much. Well, he says, "How can you do this for so long?" I said, "Well, you would too if you got treated the way I was. I mean, I was being taken care of very well, and it was just an awesome place to be."
As we mentioned earlier, and you brought up Tiger earlier on, and he retired last month. Have you spoken to Tiger Tori at all recently? Have you ever had the chance to catch up on him?
I got to catch up with him the last time I came in for Muda. It was Nishimura.
Oh yeah.
me and Nishimura, he says, I take you out to dinner tonight. I said, beautiful. Another great friend of mine. I love Nishimura. So we worked at Corrigan Hall that night and, had the match. It was good to see all the guys again, Hero, Tenzan, Kojima, all the boys were there. It was a lot of fun, Chono. And so Nishimura says, okay, we go. I said, all right. So got all cleaned up, we hop in a cab and he takes you back to the Tokyo Dome Hotel. And I said, well, that's where I'm staying. He says, oh, we're eating here. I said, okay, good. And went to a Korean barbecue. And I go walk in the door and here's Hattori. So it was me, Nishimura, Hattori, and one of the young guys, one of the young boys. And we just sat there and talked the dinner lasted 3-4 hours. It was awesome. And we reminisced about every crazy ass thing that we ever did, that ever happened, and all of our memories, and the matches, and it was just great. And it was really neat to catch up with them like that. And it was a surprise that I had no idea what was happening. And the whole night we just had these big smiles on our face. It was great food. We were in a private room, and so yeah, I really got to catch up really well there, and it was nice. He helped me a great deal throughout my career, and he was a great referee in there, Ryan. What a career he had. You talk about going for a while, man. That dude is
50 years or so. Yeah, an incredible time. And Tiger now, he's saying he'll bounce between Japan and New York and continue to do that. And he'll be looking into doing more DIY, apparently, a little bit more carpentry. As you've been step back from being active in recent years, what's been your focus
as far as being out of the business?
Yeah.
Well, it's just kind of taking a break for all them years. I was on the road for, it was crazy. I tore myself up pretty bad, my body. And it was starting to fail on me. My knees were just shot, my shoulders were shot. Had, some serious injuries that I never missed matches. I worked right through. And it wasn't that I wanted to, but I had to, kind of a deal. And you miss it all the time. You think about it, and how lucky you were to have done it. And but once you get out of it, things start getting normal. Where when you wake up, it's the same. The sun's up. It ain't like you're in another country. It's 3:00 in the morning because you went to bed and. You're jet lagged out all the time. You just not ran in the ground, And then, it took a lot. It took a while to do this book. That was a lot of fun focusing on that. Just, trying to be a good dude. Just trying to transition into another life. And, I often think I can go back and have another run at me. But, it just didn't happen. It was okay.
Yeah, definitely want to recommend A Strong Style, which is available wherever you can get books at the moment, and it's a tremendous read, and strongly recommend it. Scott, thank you so much for this time. We've had some great stories and a great conversation. If the fans anywhere around the world want to get in touch with you and follow up on what you're doing, where can they find you on social media?
Oh, they can get me on my Twitter, Facebook, scottnorton.com. It's just I'm out there, believe me. And you can get the book on Amazon, and it's doing quite well. I've had it was cool as hell doing it.
Yeah, again, thanks so much. And of course, if fans want to check out any of Scott Norton's matches, you can go to njpwworld.com and see some of the phenomenal archival content from Scott Norton. So thanks again, Scott. And until next time on the New Japan Official English Podcast, Gokigenyo, sayonara.